I don't want to post this because it's a second-hand report that could be fictitious, and it's also disgusting. Spoon, yeah. Sounds fake to me too. Earth? It started off as innocent fun. Last Saturday, an associate of mine, let's call him Jay, at the local grocery store decided that he wanted to dose our frozen manager as a joke. Keep in mind that this friend is somewhat crazy himself. He regularly ingests LSD and shrooms as if they are candy. On break, Jay put 17 blue Geltabs into the near-empty pot of coffee in the break room, all this time knowing that our frozen manager would be going on break within minutes to have his usual 3 cups of coffee. Sure enough, at 11:15 p.m., our frozen manager goes on break and begins drinking his coffee. At this point I knew the situation would be getting very ugly later on. I proceeded to leave the break room with Jay and return to work. About 20 minutes or so later the frozen manager comes down the stairs and is laughing hysterically and cracking jokes to everyone. He then returned to work in the aisle. I knew we were going to be in for some crazy shit soon. About 5 minutes later Jay went to check how our frozen manager was. Moments later, Jay calls me over to the aisle. At this point my manager was throwing boxes of stock all over the aisle. He started shouting, "Pot pies. So many chicken pies." I went over to him to see if I could calm him down somewhat. I asked him if he was okay and he just said, "Chicken pot pies have no meaning anymore." He then threw a case of stock at my head, but missed and instead hit one of the freezer doors and it cracked. At this point Jay fled work in fear of what the manager could be capable of. I quickly left the aisle in hopes that our manager would calm down. I returned 10 minutes later and the frozen manager was nowhere to be found. I went into the back room to find him, but he was nowhere to be seen. I then went to the freezer and there he was, completely naked. It was the most horrendous sight I had ever seen. Then man was sitting in a puddle of his own shit and urine masturbating. He kept repeating the words, "brains and machines. Brains and machines." I again asked him if he is okay, which he obviously wasn't, and he just kept mumbling to himself in gibberish. At this point I was freaking out because I didn't know what to do. My manager then suddenly stopped moving momentarily, looked at me, and ran out of the freezer. I then called 911 and told them to send an ambulance to the store. The frozen manager ran into the frozen aisle, still naked, and put his fists through a glass door. He was a bloody mess. I shouted at him that maybe it was time that he go home. He retorted to me, "Time? Time, you say? Time has no meaning anymore. It doesn't matter." He then was spotted by a horrified customer. He ran down the aisle and clocked the old woman right in the face. Her nose was broken. I tended to the woman until help arrived. According to the store's front-end manager, the manager ran out of the store naked into the parking lot moments later. A kid who was doing carts said that the manager started to yell at people in the parking lot about the gnomes. He kept grabbing his head and yelling, "Spiders and monkeys. Spiders and monkeys." A minute or two later, an ambulance and police car arrived at the store. The manager could not be restrained and he punched out 2 police officers. He then took cinder blocks from the greenhouse area and threw them through the windshields of several cars. At this point the manager ran back into the store and he was crying. He ran into the back room and opened the back doors of the store. I didn't even attempt to restrain him in fear that he would kill me. According to a fellow employee, the manager jumped onto a mule, a motorized lift for moving pallets of stock, and rode it out of the back of the store. He kept yammering things such as, "I am the captain of the crystal ship," and, "Land ho." He drove the mule out onto the main highway road in front of the store. I assume that the paramedics must have called for more cops, because 3 more squad cars arrived and maced the frozen manager. Traffic outside came to a halt as this was happening also. It took 5 cops to hold him down and put a straight jacket and muzzle onto him. It was a disturbing sight. I don't really know details what happened to him after that. As for my friend, he hasn't been arrested because nobody saw him put the LSD in the coffee besides me, and I wasn't going to rat on him. Therefore, he is no more a suspect than anybody else in the store. A police investigation is underway. My manager, on the other hand, is fine, I guess, but he has taken an extended 2-week vacation and has requested a transfer to a different store. We'll see what happens next.